You see, let me tell you something real today, because too many people don't understand how value works. Value is not what you say you have. Value is what you allow. The moment you start giving too much of yourself without any standards, without any limits, your value starts dropping in front of a man. Not because you are not worthy, but because you're teaching him how to treat you. When you show up every time, fix every problem, forgive every mistake, and expect nothing in return, you're not being loving, you're being available at a discount. A man respects what he has to work for. If he doesn't have to work, he doesn't protect it. Let me tell you something real, because this is where a lot of people lose their power without even realizing it. One of the biggest mistakes that kills your value in front of a man is overgiving without boundaries. And I'm not talking about being kind, supportive, or loving. I'm talking about giving so much of yourself that there's nothing left to respect. When you give your time, your energy, your emotions, your attention, and your forgiveness freely and endlessly, you remove the need for effort. And effort is where value lies. See, value is connected to sacrifice. Anything that costs nothing is treated like it means nothing. When you are always available, always understanding, always fixing, always forgiving, you teach a man that your presence is guaranteed no matter how he behaves. He stops appreciating you not because you are unworthy, but because you made access too easy. Human nature doesn't cherish what it never has to earn. Overgiving usually comes from a good place. You want to be loved, chosen, secure. You think if you give more, he'll see how special you are. But what actually happens is the opposite. The more you give without limits, the more he expects. The more he expects, the less he appreciates. Soon, what used to be effort becomes entitlement. He starts showing up late, responding less, doing the bare minimum, because he knows you'll still be there. When you don't have boundaries, you end up pouring into someone who hasn't earned that level of access to you. You give loyalty before commitment. You give emotional support before consistency. You give priority to someone who treats you like an option. And every time you do that, you quietly tell him that your standards are flexible. A man doesn't rise to expectations that don't exist. Let me make this clear. Boundaries are not walls. Boundaries are rules for how you deserve to be treated. When you don't set them, someone else sets the rules, and trust me, those rules won't benefit you. Saying no sometimes, pulling back when effort disappears, and matching energy is not playing games. It's protecting your worth. Overgiving also trains you to ignore your own needs. You start saying yes when you want to say no. You start staying quiet when something hurts you. You start convincing yourself that love means sacrifice, even when you're the only one sacrificing. And the more you abandon yourself, the more invisible your value becomes. A man notices when you don't revolve your entire life around him. He notices when you have standards, when your time matters, when your presence isn't automatic. Scarcity creates respect. Not manipulation, not silence as punishment, but healthy distance that says, I know what I bring, and I don't give it away for free. When you overgive, you remove mystery, you remove challenge, you remove the opportunity for him to step up. A man can't value what he never had to earn. If you want to keep your value, you have to stop confusing love with self-neglect. Love grows when both people invest. The moment you're the only one pouring, the balance breaks, and when balance breaks, respect follows right behind. Let me say this plainly, because too many people confuse silence with strength. Ignoring disrespect in the name of love is one of the fastest ways to lose your value in front of a man. Disrespect doesn't always show up loud. Sometimes it comes quietly through dismissive tones, broken promises, jokes that cut a little too deep, or actions that don't match words. And when you let those moments slide without addressing them, you are not keeping the peace. You are teaching someone how far they can go with you. See, respect is the foundation before love ever shows up. Without respect, affection means nothing. When a man interrupts you, ignores your feelings, minimizes your concerns, or treats your emotions like an inconvenience, and you respond by staying quiet, smiling it off, or blaming yourself, you send a message that your feelings don't require care. People repeat what they are allowed to repeat. If there is no response to disrespect, it becomes the new normal. Many people stay silent because they are afraid of being called difficult, afraid of starting an argument, afraid of losing the relationship. But here's the truth. The moment you tolerate disrespect to keep someone, you've already lost yourself. And once you lose yourself, your value fades. A man may stay, but his respect will slowly disappear. Disrespect unchecked grows bold. What starts as small comments turns into patterns. What starts as inconsistency turns into neglect. And every time you excuse it, you reinforce it. You tell him without words that your boundaries are negotiable. And once someone believes your boundaries are negotiable, they will keep pushing until there are none left. There is power in speaking up calmly and firmly. Respect doesn't require yelling, begging, or emotional speeches. It requires clarity. When you say, "I don't accept this," and your actions match your words, people listen. But when you say nothing and stay anyway, your silence speaks louder than any complaint you make later. Another mistake is mistaking potential for behavior. You see who he could be, not who he is showing you he is. You hold on to hope while ignoring patterns. But value is built on reality, not promises. A man values someone who responds to behavior, not someone who waits forever for change. Let me tell you this, a man actually respects boundaries even if he resists them at first. What he doesn't respect is emotional tolerance without standards. When you correct disrespect early, you protect the connection. When you ignore it, you poison it slowly. Respect grows when there are consequences, not punishment, consequences. Distance, withdrawal of access, changed energy. Those are the language of self-respect. Ignoring disrespect also teaches you to doubt yourself. You start questioning whether you're too sensitive, too emotional, too demanding. You shrink your voice to fit someone else's comfort. And the more you shrink, the less you are seen. Value does not survive self-silencing. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Love that requires you to tolerate disrespect is not love, it's fear. And fear never builds value. When you honor yourself, you show others how to honor you. When you stop accepting what hurts you, you elevate your presence. A man doesn't rise to words. He rises to standards. Let me explain something that destroys value quietly because it doesn't look dangerous at first. Losing your identity to please someone is one of the biggest mistakes you can make in a relationship. It starts small. You adjust your tone, your opinions, your schedule, your dreams just to keep the peace. You tell yourself it's compromise. You tell yourself it's love. But slowly, without realizing it, you begin to disappear. A man is first attracted to who you are, not who you can become for him. Your confidence, your boundaries, your passions, your independence, that's what catches attention. But the moment you start reshaping yourself to fit his comfort, you remove the very thing that made you valuable in the first place. People don't respect what has no center. When you stop speaking honestly because you're afraid of his reaction, you lose power. When you stop doing what makes you happy because it doesn't include him, you lose balance. When your decisions start revolving around whether he'll approve, you give him control he never earned. And control without effort always kills respect. A man doesn't value someone who abandons their own life to orbit his. He may enjoy the convenience, the attention, the loyalty, but deep down he stops seeing strength, and strength is what sustains attraction. Independence is not threatening to the right person. It's inspiring. But dependence makes you predictable, and predictability without standards leads to being taken for granted. You see, when you lose your identity, you also lose leverage. You start tolerating things you once wouldn't. You accept behavior you used to walk away from. You convince yourself that being chosen means staying silent. But the truth is, the more you try to be everything for someone else, the less you are to yourself. And when you stop valuing yourself, others follow that example. There is nothing attractive about someone who has no direction of their own. Dreams matter. Goals matter. Purpose matters. A man respects a person who has a life, not someone waiting on the sidelines, hoping to be included. When you put your life on pause for someone, you send a message that your time is less important than theirs. Losing your identity also creates emotional imbalance. You become overly invested, overly attached, overly afraid of loss, and fear changes how you show up. You start chasing reassurance. You start over-explaining. You start shrinking to avoid conflict. That energy is felt. And once fear replaces confidence, respect starts slipping away. Here's something people don't talk about enough. A man doesn't want to be your entire world. That's pressure. What he values is being part of your world. When you have your own rhythm, your own standards, your own purpose, your presence feels earned, not automatic. But when you drop everything for him, your presence loses weight. You should never have to trade your identity for affection. Love that requires you to disappear is not love. It's control disguised as care. When you stand firm in who you are, when you keep your voice, your values, your dreams intact, you don't just protect your value, you increase it. Because confidence doesn't come from being chosen. Confidence comes from knowing who you are with or without anyone watching. Let me talk to you about something that confuses a lot of people because it feels harmless at first. Accepting inconsistency and excuses slowly destroys your value in front of a man. It starts when effort comes and goes. Communication is strong one week and missing the next. Promises are made but rarely kept. And instead of addressing it, you explain it away. You tell yourself he's busy, he's stressed, he didn't mean it, things will change. And every excuse you accept becomes permission. Consistency is not perfection. Nobody expects someone to show up flawlessly every day, but consistency means effort has a pattern. Respect has a pattern. Interest has a pattern. When those patterns disappear and you stay anyway, you teach him that showing up halfway is enough. And once halfway becomes enough, full effort is no longer required. A man learns very quickly what he can get away with. If he knows he can disappear for days and come back like nothing happened, he will. If he knows he can promise things and never deliver without consequences, he will. Not because he's evil, but because human behavior responds to tolerance. What you tolerate becomes the standard. The danger of inconsistency is that it keeps you emotionally hooked. You start chasing the version of him that shows up sometimes. You hold on to the good moments and ignore the long gaps of confusion. That emotional roller coaster makes you doubt yourself instead of questioning his behavior. And while you're busy waiting for consistency, your value is slowly being reduced to availability. Excuses are another trap. Everyone has problems. Everyone has pressure. But effort doesn't disappear when interest is real. People make time for what matters to them. When excuses become more frequent than action, that's information. And when you ignore that information, you teach him that words matter more than behavior. Accepting inconsistency also shifts the power balance. You start adjusting your expectations instead of him adjusting his behavior. You lower the bar so the relationship can survive. But when you lower your standards to keep someone, you lose leverage. A man respects boundaries, not flexibility that costs you your peace. Let me say this clearly. Waiting patiently is different from waiting endlessly. Patience has limits. Waiting without limits is self-neglect. When you stay available during inconsistency, you become the safe option, not the priority. And no one protects what they don't prioritize. Inconsistency also kills trust. You never know where you stand. You're always guessing, hoping, interpreting. And when clarity disappears, confidence follows. You begin to question your worth instead of questioning the situation. That's how value erodes quietly, not through one big mistake, but through repeated small tolerances. A man doesn't step up when there's no requirement to. Growth happens when standards are enforced. When inconsistency is met with calm distance, changed access, or firm expectations, behavior adjusts. But when inconsistency is met with understanding every single time, nothing changes. Here's what people forget. Consistency is attractive because it signals stability, maturity, and intention. When you accept less than that, you tell him that instability is acceptable around you. And once instability is accepted, respect fades. You don't need to argue, beg, or demand. Your response to inconsistency should be alignment. If effort drops, access drops. If communication fades, availability fades. That's not punishment. That's self-respect. And self-respect is the language value speaks fluently. Let me tell you something that most people don't realize until it's too late. The way you speak when you're emotional can either protect your value